Oh, welcome back. We are tackling empty nest syndrome, that very difficult phase when the kids move out of the house, leaving parents on an emotional roller coaster. Little did you know, it can actually become one of the most exciting times in your life. Come on, go and book that cruise. We find out how by consulting with our experts. And of course, Christy and Kirsty are here to continue to unpack what is a very interesting time. And I'm beginning to realize more and more, it's not so much that we fear the kids leaving, it's almost like we fear meeting ourselves or being left with ourselves again. And there's something really powerful in that. We're not alone. As much as we might feel like, yes, the house is a little bit emptier, there might be an opportunity again to reconnect or maybe add value to the relationships within our network, to connect with friends again, because we're going to be alive for another half of our lives once this happens. It's not an end, it is a beginning. How important is that? Reaching out, connecting to that network around you, kind of finding your tribe again.
My goodness, it's almost the most important thing. When we look at a community or that social connection that we share as people, we are social animals.
Yeah.
We need that community.
In our genes,
we
literally.
need to have people, but particularly in times of change and times of almost that transition, because we all take it differently, of course. We're all individuals.
Yeah.
But with that different way of going about it as individuals, it's amazing to be able to get reassurance from one another, reassurance from fellow parents perhaps,
For sure.
reassurance from your own parents perhaps,
A
go
little
back
hook,
to
a
Granny
little-
and Grandpa
yeah,
and say, I'm so scared, this is my first time here, and let mom and dad, your mom and dad, tell you about their experience. And of course, getting that almost ability to see that we can get through this, although perhaps together, that we can get through it.
Completely. And then suddenly other things start to become more important because you get excited, you get an endorphin rush. And I'm tending towards a physical activity or something like that because it becomes kind of a life hack in that it's accessible. Just run. You don't have to go and discover yourself again. Just start running. Put one foot in front of the other with a nice new running club. Suddenly you've got your tribe around you. You're thinking about other things. What are some good activities or some good communities to connect with? A practical way to embrace this.
My best suggestions would of course be literally going into your own self first. What are your interests? What are your hobbies?
Miss doing?
What do you want to do with your time? Goodness gracious, it's one thing saying go off and join a gym, but you get terrible shin splints, you hate gym, and the fear of going through that door is crippling. Don't go to gym. Perhaps we can look somewhere else, but we need to know you first. So as Christy said, take that moment, connect with self first, and remind yourself what we enjoy doing. And then suddenly go onto the apps, go onto Facebook, Instagram, and see what exists in those niche interests we have. There are amazing communities out there and amazing groups to join. But we need to know ourselves first to know what we want to do.
I love that. So let's get to know ourselves again and start that journey. And maybe a good, I suppose I use gratitude to kind of bring about a shift in my mindset. So maybe that's a good jumping off point. But to turn the pain and the loss into a celebration, what does that look like mentally? What exercise can we start to employ to bring about that shift?
Yeah. So I think once you've done the whole acknowledging, you know, this is how I'm feeling and all of that, it's like, let that settle.
Grieve it. Do the grieving. If you need to grieve, man.
And also just realize that that's not a linear process. You know, you might have got further enough along to now start going, cool, what next? And it might crop up again, and that's okay. But yeah, I think journaling is a great one where you can sit and you can reflect and you can say, okay, well, what are my values? Values are always such a good place to start because, you know, when you make choices that align with the things that are important to you, then you feel like your most authentic self. And that's what you're discovering again. What is that authentic self of mine? So look at your values, look at what you enjoy doing. I'll never forget doing a Zumba class about 15 years after I used to dance, doing hip hop.
Yeah.
And it was like every cell in my body went, yes, we love this.
Well, you suddenly understand
And I'd forgotten.
time in a different way. You know, because the past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist, it's just the moment. And it's amazing when you bring your body back into that moment, how much it responds to that.
Yeah.
Feeding off that, I would imagine you start looking at work through different eyes now. And for me, I work as hard as I do for my kids.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us get our validation like that. I'll deal with the pain for my kids. I'll put myself through that, the sacrifice, whatever. How do we start to kind of calibrate that and go back to work with a sense of purpose.
So I think for the parents who were already working while they were raising their children, it might be very tempting to throw yourself into work to distract yourself from this quite difficult
Fill that
transition.
void.
Yeah. And so I want to caution you and say, don't do that, because that's just a one-way ticket to burnout. You know, rather sit with the space and see what you want to do with it. So there's that. But also for those who weren't working, you know, the stay-at-home parents, and the single parents as well. But the stay-at-home parents, like, you now get to decide. You can actually have a whole career. You can lean into that entrepreneurial spirit you might have had. You could take that, you could actually do that side hustle.
Yeah, with all this added new knowledge that you've got
Exactly.
with the experience
the energy
of life.
and the
Yeah.
space that you have, and that too, the wisdom. You know, you've gone through this immense journey, and you've learned a thing or two along the way, and maybe there's space for you to help people that are still coming up on that journey.
I love that, yeah.
There's so much that you can do and give back, and yeah, so just don't jump into like
Go back to
filling
your
it.
antenatal WhatsApp group from 18 years ago and see how everyone's doing, see where they're at in the world. Christy, maybe just a bit of a mantra or something that someone is really going through this right now, something that they can say to themselves right now or in those dark moments to kind of shift that perspective.
Absolutely. Just remember, and always remember, everything is temporary as long as we keep moving forward.
I love that. One foot in front of the other, then go and do some paddle. Do something that you enjoy. I think there is an opportunity here that I'm beginning to understand. Thankfully, I've still got a few years to go before I go through this gateway, but whether the kids are there or not, the house is still a home. Don't forget about that. So here's to navigating the empty nest stage with fresh perspectives and, most importantly, a new, renewed sense of purpose and passion.